Right, hello everyone. Welcome to Kabbalah Explained Simply. If you're in the chat right now, if you're watching this broadcast wherever you are in the world, please let me know in the chat where you're watching from. It's always great to see all the different places in the world where people are connecting from. My name is Joseph. I'm a senior instructor and creative director for KabU. KabU is our online education center dedicated to teaching the authentic wisdom of Kabbalah and the science of connection that originates from it. And today's topic for this Kabbalah Explained Simply session, as you can see, is tapping into the mind of nature. Or in other words, what makes everything in nature tick? Does nature have a mind? Does it have its own mind? And if so, what does that make of us? Are we parts of that mind? If there is one, what does it have to do with us? So this is the kind of questions that we're going to get into today. As always, we have friends like Linda and Ruth behind the scenes who will help me pick up your questions. So as soon as you have any kind of question, you're invited and encouraged to send that question right away into the chat, and Linda or Ruth will help me and pick them up and help me not miss anything. So I think we're ready to start. So without further ado, tapping into the mind of nature, Kabbalah Explained Simply, coming up now. All right, so tapping into the mind of nature. So first of all, let me tell you a word here about nature documentaries, because I'm going to start with sharing with you a few things that I saw in a recent nature documentary, and I want to preface that and say something even before that. I have to say that there's very, very little that I typically would recommend anyone to watch on television or the internet or anything, just because I think that a lot of what there is and what we call entertainment is not healthy for us to watch and to consume. But there is something that is still that I can recommend, and that is nature documentaries. There's a lot to learn and to see also, and there's some beautiful stuff that is being produced. And so, one second. I think I'm told there's a little bit of a hiccup on Facebook, but I think it's fine now. Okay, let me know if you're experiencing any kind of troubles in the broadcast. Let us know in the chat if you can hear and see well. All right. We will I'll just quickly test here if we can improve the quality for those watching on Facebook. I think now it should be better. So hopefully that worked. In any case, on YouTube too, if you have any kind of dramas with the broadcast, please let me know. I'm gonna assume that everyone can hear me and see me well right now. So as I was starting to say, I recently watched the first episode of a nature documentary called Our Planet. It's actually the second season. There was Our Planet 1, and this is Our Planet 2. And I watched the first episode and a little bit more from the second one, and it was really wonderful. It was great. It was all about the mass migration of animal life. And what it beautifully shows is how at any given moment, like right now, there are billions and billions of animals of all kinds that are on the move. and their journeys can be very long, and you'll see from a few examples that I'll show you. And that is quite remarkable when you zoom out and see the picture, thanks to these findings. And so, for example, this is called the desert locust of Ethiopia. And so in late March, something very interesting happens there. This locust, it starts on the ground, and because there are good conditions in terms of plant life that is growing in late March, this locust starts swarming. It starts to grow. They start by moving on the ground, and essentially they just eat everything, all the plant life that is in their way. And so because of that, the swarm multiplies and grows 10 times faster than what it usually is. And then later on, something even more remarkable happens. These locusts, which did not have wings, suddenly mutate. Something like a caterpillar that becomes a butterfly. They mutate, they grow wings, and then they form a super swarm that is flying. So that's about 200 billion locusts that are just flying across planet Earth, and they're basically eating all the plant life in their way. And this is just to give you a sense of what's happening. They travel, they meaning the entire swarm, right? 200 billion locusts, more or less. This swarm travels about 100 kilometers every day, while they consume 400,000 tons of food every single day. And so they move through countries and continents, and they go from pretty much here around Kenya, Ethiopia, as I said, and then they go up. They even cross the Red Sea. They go through this area here all the way through the Himalayas, and then they reach Tibet and this area here. So that's a huge journey, 100 kilometers every day, while they're eating 400,000 tons of food every single day. Essentially, they move until the seasons change and bring drought, or essentially their food runs out. Another example, this is very small here, but this is Hawaii, and very close to, relatively close, about 1,600 kilometers from Hawaii, there is a very remote and small piece of land called Lacin. It's a kind of an island. And this right here, this bird is a unique big seabird called the Lacin Albatross. And what's interesting about this is when they can live for about 60 years or so. But when it's a few months old, their parents bring food for them from about 3,000 kilometers away. And throughout their lives, for about 60 years, as I said, they fly millions of kilometers, because they're basically it's mostly foraging at sea, because that's where they get most of their food. So a typical route, for instance, could be from Lacin Island here towards Japan, and then up towards Alaska, and then south again. So a very big journey. Here's another example. In late June, something interesting happens in Alaska's Bering Sea. This is the Bering Sea. This is Alaska is pretty much around here. This is Russia. And so the Bering Sea brings up a very interesting phenomenon. One of the greatest gatherings of life on Earth happens there. This is because the seasons change, and when the seasons change, when comes late June, the sunlight extends from about 7 hours a day to 17 hours a day. That triggers an explosion of plankton and krill that can be eaten by a lot of animals at sea. And so a lot of animals gather there when this time comes, when that time of the year, from many different places. And one example is the humpback whales that travel a month to get there. And then this one is really phenomenal. There's about 1 million sooty shearwaters. That's how this bird is called. It's a kind of a seabird. They fly 1,000 kilometers every day, non-stop, from literally the other side of the world. You see, this is pretty much the trajectory. This is New Zealand here at the bottom of the planet, more or less, let's say. And this is the Bering Sea. So they really come from the other side of the world. And altogether, their round trip across the entire Pacific Ocean is the back and forth, and they fly in a unique way. It's not a straight line. So their round trip across the entire Pacific Ocean is about 65,000 kilometers. Just think about that. For comparison, the entire circumference of Earth is about 40,000 kilometers. And this bird goes through, every year goes through 65,000 kilometers. This is the longest migration of an animal on planet Earth. So very, very remarkable. But why am I showing you all of these examples and even recommending to watch this for anyone who's interested? Because when you zoom out and you try to kind of get a feel for what is happening for all of those migration routes that animals are taking across the planet, that, first of all, it puts you in awe. And immediately, I think it makes it very clear that this is part of a planetary program, planetary movement that is happening here. What do I mean by that? All life on Earth depends on the freedom to move. Animals have to migrate in order to breed, in order to feed, in order to find shelter, to nest, and so forth. And so life on Earth depends on the freedom to move, but also the movement across the planet is essential to the health of the planet. So in a way, it's just like in our bodies, right? At any given moment, there are trillions of cells in your body, and many of them, billions and billions of your cells, are constantly moving. There's an entire transportation system throughout your entire body that reaches all of the nooks and crevices of your body. There are so many different networks of transportation, whether it's the circulation of the blood or the lymphatic system or the nervous system and so forth. And there are many ways in which different things move inside your body, from food and nutrients through the digestion system, chemical signals, electric signals. Your body is in constant motion on the inside. To us on the outside, it can seem like, you're sitting still, like maybe right now. But your body on the inside is constantly moving. And so it's part of a collective program, meaning all of the cells in your body are moving together to serve this organism, this one organism that is your body. And so a similar thing seems to be happening on planet Earth. So when we look at a certain insect, like that locust we looked at, right? Or a lion, or a wildebeest, or a bird, or a fish, whatever it is, when we look at it move, we can think of, it just seems to us like one animal is moving, or maybe a herd or a swarm is moving. But all of those movements of all the animals, billions of animals on planet Earth, are part of one global movement. And that movement is what I referred to earlier as like a planetary program. Now, if you zoom out even further, then all of these migrations are driven by the seasons, the changing seasons of planet Earth. Well, where do the seasons come from? The seasons come from the tilt, the 23 degrees tilt that Earth has with respect to the sun. So this means that while Earth is orbiting the sun, that tilt that it has creates a situation where one side of the planet gets sun and the other side of the planet does not get sun. And that changes as the Earth is orbiting the sun and orbiting around itself. And because of that 23 degrees, we get that unique situations, which we call seasons. And so all life on Earth are intrinsically connected to the seasons, and because of the sunlight and so forth. And so why does that tilt exist? Where does that tilt come from? That tilt of planet Earth, as far as we know, comes from an explosion about 4.5 billion years ago. 4.5 billion years ago, there was a collision between Earth and another planet. Scientists refer to it as Theia, and the explosion left Earth in such a situation where Earth survived, but it received that tilt. And thanks to that tilt, we have these changing seasons and so forth. And so that just kind of goes to show you how everything, not just on planet Earth, but in our solar system, is somehow designed, programmed in a way that it enables the emergence of life. And in fact, all of life on Earth exists because the entire universe is fine-tuned for life. So this is something known in physics as the fine-tuning of the universe. This means that there are all sorts of physical constants that if you change them, even ever so slightly, life would not emerge. So if we think about planet Earth, so you can think about, for instance, the perfect mixture of gases in our atmosphere, right? Or the fact that Earth developed this magnetic field that emerges from the molten metals in the belly of the planet. And that magnetic field is what protects life from solar radiation, which comes here from the sun. And without that magnetic field, no life on Earth would be possible. But it goes even beyond and before the creation of Earth. Just gravity itself, it has a certain strength. Gravity has a certain strength, and gravity is what holds planets and stars in place. Now, if that strength of gravity were just a bit too strong, planets would be too close to each other and they would not form in stable orbits. If gravity was too weak, planets and stars would be too far apart. And again, stable solar systems would not form. So this is part of what we call the fine-tuning of the universe. And so when you zoom out and you begin to reflect on how everything is meticulously, perfectly interwoven and designed in such a way that enables the emergence of life, it gets you thinking. It gets you thinking. And so the question that I'd like you to think about is this: what is that intelligence that puts all of those pieces together? What is the mind of nature? Or where is that mind of nature? What is that intelligence or that force or that binding wisdom, however you want to call it, that puts all the pieces together and creates life and develops life and so forth? Who or what or where is the mind of nature? And so when we talk about nature, this is where Kabbalah can really take us deeper than what we usually think of. Because nature really isn't the plant life or the animal life that we can see and experience through our five senses. It's not the fish, it's not the birds, it's not the other kinds of animals or plants or even planets and galaxies and solar systems and so forth. Nature is the program behind all of these forms of life. It is the program that determines and governs the emergence and the development of all of life. Now, it's clear to us from science as well that we have laws of nature. And these laws of nature are all connected. And even though to us, it's very hard to research all of nature as a single program. So what we end up doing in science is breaking down every little bit of nature to a field of research that we can examine, right? So we have astrophysics and biology and zoology and chemistry and sociology and mineralogy and whatnot. Many, many, many different fields of science. And we easily forget that they're all connected, because nature is not these fields of research. These fields of research are just our way of dissecting nature to pieces that we can deal with. But really, if we could, we would research nature's program in its entirety as a whole, because nature is a whole. And so in our sort of material research of the world, we easily forget that all of these areas are interconnected. And then we come up with all kinds of interdisciplinary fields that try to connect one or two or more fields of science together, such as network science and other examples. But nature itself is not fields of research. Nature is a single program. All the laws of nature are interconnected. They're all one whole. And so what we see is kind of a surface level outcome of the program, of the hidden, deeper program that drives everything. We see animals, we see trees, we see rivers, we see people, we see all kinds of things in nature, but the program behind them is hidden from us. Kabbalists call this perception roots and branches. So the nature's program is what you can call the root level, the level of roots, of causes, of reasons, of lines of code that determine everything that later materializes in our limited perception, which you can call a perception of branches. We live on the level of outcomes, consequences, branches of those upper roots or deeper roots that ultimately coalesce into a single root, because it's a single program at the end of the day, ultimately. And so Kabbalists call this roots and branches. We perceive, our perception of the world is only a perception of branches, but we don't see how each of these branches that we identify in the form of every form of life in our world and everything that exists in our world, we can't see how they all connect to deeper roots that govern them, and ultimately a single root, which you can call nature's ultimate program, or nature's holistic program. And so Baal HaSulam, the great Kabbalist of the previous century, wrote the following in his monumental article called The Peace. He writes this: nature means, in Hebrew, it's hateva. That's the word for nature. Hateva, nature, amounts to God, or is equal to God. Same thing. God is the Hebrew word for God is Elohim. As they have the same numerical value of 86. So Baal HaSulam, great Kabbalist of the previous century, tells us that when we say nature or God in Kabbalah, we mean the same thing, exactly the same thing. We're not talking about something beyond or additional. Nature itself, the root of nature, the foundation of nature, the program of nature, the mind of nature, however you want to call it, is synonymous in Kabbalah with the word God. And also the word God in Hebrew, it has a different meaning. It has a technical meaning that I won't go deep into, but that word Elohim is actually comprised of two words, mi and ele, and those two words together, they represent the entire vessel of creation. This is too much details for now. For those who will stick around in the Zoom session, the Q&A session after this public session, the KabU students, or anyone who wants to join, I can maybe expand on it there. But for now, let's continue reading just the end of the quote. Thus, I can refer to the laws of nature as the laws of God, and vice versa, for they are one and the same. So again, one and the same, exactly the same thing. 86, this numerical value, again, without going too deep into this, Gematria in Kabbalah, it is a form of signifying numerical values to certain words, because letters, the Hebrew letters, are actually like symbols of code, and they have numerical values. And so, long story short, Baal Sulam tells us that the word for nature and the word for God are the same, and they are also, their contents is equal from a Kabbalistic perspective. This is what this means. So, that one program that governs all of nature is the same as saying God, or call it the mind of nature, call it whatever you want. And this is what Kabbalists research. I'm gonna go ahead and move on to questions in just a bit. But if you have any, definitely don't hesitate and ask your questions. Send them to the chat right away. And Linda probably, and Ruth, will help me make sure that they'll collect all these questions and will help me answer all of them. So we'll continue a little bit and then move on to your questions. So the mind of nature, it doesn't exist in any individual element. The mind of nature is that which connects all the pieces together. Everything in our universe is connected, not just in terms of space, not just across all of space. So if you think about the entire universe, it's clear to us that all the space in the universe exists all the time, right? Space itself expands, actually. But all of space exists all the time. But more and more physicists today also recognize that time is also something that exists all the time. All of time exists all the time. This is very hard for us to explain, of course, in earthly terms, because it's counterintuitive to how we perceive the world. But everything is connected, not just across all of space, but also across all of time. So again, to kind of look at an example of how this materializes in our world. So, all of the energy that runs everything on our planet and everything in the universe is the same energy that was created 13.8 billion years ago in the Big Bang, which is this beginning point of the material universe as scientists recognize it. And things that happened in the last, since that moment of the Big Bang, all create the conditions for the states that come afterwards. And so, for example, the explosions that took place, what we call supernovas, that took place billions of years ago, they created in the belly of stars the elements that make up what we are today. The iron in your blood that's running through your body, through your veins right now, comes from these explosions that created the new element of iron billions and billions of years ago. And the same with the carbon in your muscles and the oxygen in your lungs and so forth. And so everything that has happened made it possible for the next level of life to emerge. And that is always the case in what we see happening throughout almost 14 billion years of evolution. And so that is a kind of a perspective that helps us understand what it means that everything is connected, not just across space, but also across time. So the mind of nature, the mind, the program that governs everything that we experience within space and time, that mind of nature already includes it. Some scientists have recognized this. A famous one is Sir James Jeans, who was a big contributor in quantum mechanics and in stellar evolution and other things. He famously said that when the more you study the universe begins to look like a great thought, like one great thought. Kabbalists have been saying exactly that for millennia, for almost 6,000 years now. Since the beginning of the wisdom of Kabbalah, Kabbalists have been saying that we are living in a thought. They call it the thought of creation. So that thought of creation contains within it all of space and all of time and everything that emerges within space and time, which is our level of experience. That thought of creation is synonymous with what you can call the mind of nature or God. It's all one and the same. So the only difference really, if we want to look at a scientific perspective versus a Kabbalistic perspective in terms of how scientists versus Kabbalists, how they study the mind of nature, that's where the big difference lies. Scientists essentially study the mind of nature by finding all kinds of connections between physical elements that we can observe. So, for instance, all those animal migration routes that we looked at before, right? So scientists using all kinds of GPS type of trackers and all kinds of things, they can figure out the migration routes of animals, and then they see that it's connected to the changing of the seasons and how that has to do with the tilt of the earth towards the sun and so forth. So through exploring all kinds of connections between the physical elements of the world that we perceive, that we can observe, they can make some conclusions about the governing laws of nature that design and govern these connections. So they study the mind of nature, if you will, in that form. Kabbalists study the mind of nature in a completely different way. Rather than looking at the outcomes, the branches, as we said earlier, the outcomes on the physical level of experience and trying to figure out what is the connections between them, they study the mind of nature through something they call equivalence of form. And that means that they become like that mind of nature. They become as if sympathetic to it. They identify with it. What does that mean? That means that they learned how to think and feel even like the mind of nature, like nature thinks and feels, so to speak. We'll talk more about what that means. Let me see what's up with your questions. So, okay, I see a few questions here. Alisa Kogan is asking, why is it the nature, but God, not the God? Yeah, you're right. In Hebrew, that's just a matter of where was that question? Yeah. So how does that work? Why does that, and that has to do with the numerical calculation. Yeah, so just very quickly, actually, let me show you that slide again. It'll be easier for you to see. Okay, so yes, the word for God in Hebrew is Elohim, and the numerical value of it is 86. The word for nature in Hebrew is Hateva. You can say just Teva, but Hateva is sort of a more proper way of saying the word. It's just a matter of how Hebrew works. And so Hateva equals Elohim equals 86. In other words, God equals nature, same thing. Okay, here's a question from One Warrior. Yeah, One Warrior is asking, what is man's purpose or position within this design? Beautiful. Thank you very much, One Warrior. Thank you for asking this. This is a very important question. Yeah. So we, as the Kabbalists have done, as human beings, we have a unique possibility, and that is to experience the mind of nature in a conscious way. Again, this is what Kabbalists call through equivalence of form. What does that mean? That means that we can aim, calibrate our minds and hearts towards that mind of nature. How do we do that? Well, the mind of nature, as we can already see from what we discussed so far, the mind of nature is not in any individual element and not in any individual person. There is not one element, one animal, or one person that you can say possesses the mind of nature. Yet the mind of nature governs everything and every element in reality. So how do the elements, how can they be in touch with the mind that governs them? And the answer is that the mind of nature lies in the connection between everything that exists. And so the connection between the elements is where we need to direct, to calibrate our mind and our heart in order to find the mind of nature. Meaning the mind of nature is discovered when we connect, and we find it there in the connection between us ultimately to the rest of reality, because every one of us is connected to the entire cosmos and to everything that ever existed, not just that exists right now. We are connected because we're all outcomes of the same mind of nature, as we called it, right? And so the way for us to become similar, to get into some resonance with that mind of nature, to begin to sort of hear it or see it or experience it, feel it, however you want to phrase it. The only way for us to do that is to aim ourselves towards connection with the rest of reality. This means that as humans, I'm still answering your question, One Warrior, but just in sort of a global perspective, context. As humankind, as a global society, we will have to gain a feeling of the single organism that we are all part of. This requires conscious work on our part. It's not just going to happen by evolution. Evolution will gradually push us to go there, but we will have to make a conscious move, a conscious choice, a conscious step towards feeling that single organism that we're all part of. That requires the conscious work of the human being. And from a Kabbalistic perspective, this is the entire purpose of humans in existence. This is the reason why we ask ourselves as kids, as human being kids, as children, we ask ourselves, what's going on here? What is the purpose of life? What is the purpose of existence even? What is the meaning and purpose of my individual life in this reality, which I'm not even sure is real? Is it not real? Is there a force that binds everything together? If there is, why do we see so much harm and deprivation and suffering in the world? We have all kinds of questions as human beings, and they awaken within us in a very natural way from a young age. The fact that in our modern society especially, but in general also in history, we mostly, for the most part, we don't know how to answer that question, and therefore we sort of push it away or put it to sleep and just drown in the currents of day-to-day life. That doesn't mean that the question went away. And so the question, Kabbalists say, is the initial calibration. It's that point within you that begins to calibrate your mind and heart towards the mind of nature. It appears in the form of questions about the mind of nature. Is there such a thing? And where is it? And what is my purpose? And our role or our goal, our purpose within this entire reality is to find the governing mind, connect with the very source of life itself, the mind and heart of nature, I would say even. And this is what the Kabbalistic methodology is all about. It's about how we put ourselves in such a connection with each other, with other people, so that in that connection with other people, we can begin to experience the mind of nature working between us. That is, in a nutshell, what Kabbalah is all about. All right, I'll move to some additional questions. Lerato is asking, if nature is a program running our experience of reality, are we bits of code trying to view and understand the source code? Absolutely, that's not a bad analogy. Something like that, yes. This goes deeper into Kabbalah and deeper into the structure of creation, the structure of reality, which I can't go into today in a big way. If you're interested in the structure of creation according to Kabbalah, and also how there are, I would say, all kinds of insights that Kabbalah gives us into the nature of reality that explain findings from contemporary science, then I recommend two courses in KabU. One of them is called The Emergent Universe, and another one is called The Blueprint of Creation. Both of them are led by our amazing instructor Gianni, and he did an amazing work there. So if you're interested, check out KabU, and you can find these courses there. But to say something, one last thing about this, about the Lerato's question about the source code, and are we like bits of code trying to understand the source code? The reality that we are in right now is what we can refer to as a shattered reality, meaning we exist in a shattered perception. It's not that reality itself is shattered, but our experience of it is shattered. This means that we experience everything through the lens of separateness. There's me and there is the world. There is me and there is nature. There's me and there are others, me and the rest of reality. And that's how each and every human being sees the world. We can also call it an egoistic perception. It's not good, it's not bad. It's our initial state of being. It's okay. That's where we start our evolution from, our spiritual evolution from. And so from that state of a shattered perception, we gradually calibrate our perception so that we can begin to perceive and experience our connection to everything else that exists. We can also call that exiting the ego, if you want to put it that way, or transcending the ego, rising above the limitations of the ego, which, by the way, create this entire experience that we call physical world within space and time. All of it is a product of the ego's perception. And so, so as I said, it goes deeper than that. But yes, we are one whole. We, meaning all of us, everyone who's listening right now, all of humanity, and all of nature, and all of reality, from the insects in Ethiopia to the farthest reaches of the universe where no man has ever gone. We are connected to all of that. That is all part of us. We are experiencing this single consciousness as a material world, as a physical existence. We think about ourselves. We experience ourselves as bodies that live and die for a limited amount of time. And by the way, it's an interesting thing how we all know that our bodies die at some point, and like it or not, your body is not eternal, right? And yet we get very, very, very attached to everything that we experience in this limited life cycle that we have, even though it's very clear that in a few years it's not going to be there anymore. And so the mind of nature, or the program, or this deeper reality that we are talking about, is beyond time, space, and physical matter. It is the thought that governs everything that exists here. There's more to say about this, but great question, Lorado, but not enough time to continue. I'll mention again that there is we have like 11 minutes left for this broadcast. Right after that, I'll be doing a Q&A session on Zoom. This is for KabU students. Now, if you're not a KabU member, no worries, not a problem. You can still go to a link. I'm sure our team behind the scenes will now probably post that link in the chat or something. So you can go and register for KabU. You can sign in for a free trial, and then you can access the Zoom, the Q&A session right after this session. So you're invited. So everyone who's watching is invited. Let's see if we can take a couple more questions in the time we have left. So Marlon Rodriguez 002 is asking, why is the universe a thought of God and not a feeling? Why didn't God create out of feelings instead of thought? Okay. Hey, Marlon Rodriguez. We are speaking here in a very kind of superficial way. I'm using plain language to explain very profound topics, and they also have a very technical language. There's a very technical, precise vocabulary in the wisdom of Kabbalah, but if I use that language now, we wouldn't understand each other at all unless you have some prior knowledge of Kabbalah. That's why we're using words here that can mean different things, and they're not necessarily a precise terminology. So when we say the thought of creation, it's not that this thought doesn't is divorced from feeling. If we want to be more accurate, the only thing that was ever created is not physical matter. Physical matter is just how reality appears to us. The only thing that was created is a vessel, a receptacle that was designed to receive all that the emanator, or if you want to call it the creator, or the guiding force behind all of nature, created and has to give. We also call it the upper light in the wisdom of Kabbalah. And so that light can only be received in a receptacle. And that's what we are, and that's what all of creation is. All of creation is a receptacle, a vessel designed to receive the upper light. Now, the nature of the vessel is a desire to receive, pleasure and delight, a desire to receive fulfillment, a desire to receive the light. And so that desire is what we are. You are made of desires. You are a unique combination of human desires called Marlon Rodriguez. And so is each and every other human in the world. And all of humanity's evolution is actually an evolution of desires. That's why if you trace our evolution back throughout history, you'll see very clearly that we started a few thousand years ago as created beings focused on survival, focused on desires for food and shelter and sex and family. And then gradually we started expanding what we do and how we think and how we feel because our desires grew. We wanted more. And that brought about the idea that I can take a piece of reality and call it mine. And that's where, possession comes from. And then trade and commerce and currencies and the desire for money and so forth. These are all historical outcomes of the spiritual development of mankind, which is a development of our desire. And so we grow from this basic animalistic desires for food and sex and family and shelter to more advanced human social desires for money and honor and power and wealth and fame and even knowledge. And the most advanced desire that the human being has is the desire for reconnecting with the source of life itself. Or in other words, you can call it the desire for spirituality, the desire for the spiritual. That is the point in our evolution where we begin to come back to that reality of oneness that exists beyond the veil of shatteredness and separateness and the illusion of the ego that we exist in right now. Again, this too opens up a whole thing. I'm just giving some kind of hints of an answer here, as much as my time allows, because there are a few more questions here. Let's try to get to some. AJ Kraft asked the following question: are we in a shift between ages? It feels like a pivotal point in time. Yes, we are. AJ. We're in a very unique and also precarious time, I would say. We are in the Kabbalists call this time that we are in the first generation of the last generation. What does that mean? It means that we right now in the 21st century, and if you want to be even more specific, Barasulam said 1995 was the point in time where the world as we know it has ended. It already ended. We are in the death throes of the old world and the birth of the new world. And even though that can take even a century or more, or it can be much faster, it depends on human choice here, something called free choice, which is another riddle to discuss. Let's put it aside right now. But we're in that transition point. That's why we're going to see more and more as we go deeper into the 21st century. We're going to see more and more how a lot of things that were relevant for centuries are no longer relevant. The old world, the way it was, will no longer be functioning because it's like a new law has been introduced into the system or revealed in the system, and that is the law of global interdependence. Remember that someone else asked another question, and I replied that we have to gain an experience of the single organism that we are part of. We have to begin to find, every person has to gradually evolve this emotional connection to the global organism that we are part of. This is something that we are gradually moving towards. We're not yet aware of it. I'm not saying that a lot of people feel it, that many people are consciously moving towards this, but unconsciously, reality is pushing us there, and it appears in the form of global interdependence. We will see by the day even how every area of human engagement is as if plagued by global interdependence. We'll see it in our economy, which is already very much a global economy. We'll see it in, COVID is a classic example, how quickly it became so global because human beings today are so globalized and globally interdependent. We'll see it ecologically, absolutely, because the kind of challenges that we will be faced with are such that cannot be solved without working on them throughout the planet and by cooperating across the planet, and so on and so forth. That's another thing we can go deeper into, but in a nutshell, that's where we are. We're at a crossroads. We're at a transition point where the old world is dying, the new world still hasn't been born, but it's in the birth canal. And it's a precarious time because on the one hand, it is a new beginning, but on the other hand, it's the demise of the old world, and that brings with it a lot of resistance to change, and just change by itself. Any kind of change is traumatic for us as human beings. We don't like change. And yet change is, what we go through all the time, and we are very adaptive. But will we be conscious enough to not become victims of the change and undergo the change in a nice way, in a pleasant way? That's up to us. That's up to the free choice of the human beings living today. So, I see that our time is pretty much up. We're not going to have time to take more questions right now. But again, I do invite anyone who's watching right now to join us in the KabU Q&A Zoom session. So if you're already a KabU member, you probably know how to get there, and you probably get the Zoom link in your email. If you're not a KabU member and you want to join this Q&A session right now on Zoom, then just use the link. Use the link that was posted in the chat. You can just sign in for a free trial. Then you go back to the Zoom link and you'll click it, and you'll find yourself there. So I'm really hoping for you to be there. And one more thing I want to tell everyone about is the KabU retreat. There is a very, very unique event. Those who who attended one know, the Kabbalah retreat is just the most perfect opportunity for everyone who wants to be part of this process of spiritual awakening, spiritual connection, to really recharge your spiritual batteries. Whether it's the first time for you or you've attended such a retreat before, it's a 3-day experience where you just come out elevated. Again, if it's your first time, perfect. If it's more than your first time, even more perfect. And you can connect to this event. This is it's going to take place on September 8th through the 10th. This one is taking place in North America, specifically in a place called Iroquois Springs. It's in upstate New York. We're trying to hold these retreats twice a year. So the last one was on May in Amsterdam, and this one is in North America. And we do that so that people can choose the place that is closer to them and come physically. It's very recommended to come physically. We disconnect from the world for 3 days, creating such an environment in nature, beautiful nature scenery all around us, and we are creating an environment that really, really makes it easy for us to focus on directing our minds and hearts towards connection, between experience it as much as we can in those 3 days. So I highly recommend it for anyone who feels that their heart belongs to this. You can participate physically or virtually. If you can't come physically, you can always come attend virtually. Go to retreat.kabbalinconnect.com for the details and the tickets. There's also an early bird discount that you don't want to miss. So go ahead if you're interested. Check out all the details and get your tickets at retreat.kabbalinconnect.com. I have to conclude. I will see the Kabbalah students and anyone who's interested in the Kabbalah Zoom session, the Q&A session, in just a minute. And till then, and for everyone who was here, thank you very much for listening. Thank you for your questions. All the best.